Hi, I'm Michelle Tennant. I'm the president of Henderson County Beekeepers Association in the beautiful Smoky Mountains in Western North Carolina. And I recently received an email from an author, and his name is Dennis. So,
Yes.
Hey, Dennis, we've got Peggy Brown on your, let me just change your name real quick so that we actually have your name, not your beautiful wife's name.
That's
So
my boss.
yeah, we know who the boss is, right? Okay. So Dennis Brown, and then I want to talk to you today. I just want to put the name of your book here. It was Beekeeping, a Personal Journey, and that's what you wanted to talk to our club about today. Let me just
That's
show
true.
everybody the book. So Dennis wrote this book, Beekeeping, a Personal Journey by Dennis Brown. Here it is on Amazon. And the thing that I loved most about what you said is that books mostly talk about the mechanical parts, right? And one of the things that you talked about is to blend that, but with the passion we feel with
That's
working
correct.
for our bees, right? So,
Yes.
yeah. Oh, there it is.
I do have another book we can talk about real quick as
Yeah, I
well.
would love to. Show me the other book too.
This is the more mechanical side,
Okay.
questions and answers. This is over the years, I kept questions and I kept the answers that I gave back to the folks, and I put it all together in this one book.
Isn't that lovely? Why don't you thumb through it and talk to us a little bit about what's inside?
Okay. Well, first of all, I have always been considered to be a rebel in the beekeeping field because I have all these years have gone and done experiments on the things that were out there, the different systems in beekeeping, and I changed a whole bunch of them, and they called me a rebel, but that's okay. So I've changed a bunch of these things. It's like I'm a chemical-free beekeeper. However, that doesn't mean that I go out and buy chemicals at no cost. It means that I never put chemicals in my hives, never have. So some of the things that I
Now,
do
before
cover,
we move on, let's see where in the world you are, because I know immediately people are going to be like, "What with varroa
uh,
mites?" So tell us where you are in the world, because that may impact whether or not you can do chemical-free beekeeping. Please tell us.
okay. Actually, you can do chemical-free beekeeping anywhere in the lower 48. And I am in Bryan, Texas, and have been here in Texas all my life. And um, it's been a wonderful thing not to have to add chemicals into my hives because you're poisoning your customers, you're poisoning the hives, and it's not necessary to do that. It's
So
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 easy.
we're going to have a really juicy conversation because I'm the president of a club that
Okay.
believes in fighting varroa mites. You can use certain methods that are more natural than others, but the
Yes.
because of the where we are with our neighbors and so forth, the club, when it comes to using or not using things like oxalic acid, which is also natural to the bees, the club is going to lean toward really fighting varroa mites and making sure that we're in line with traditional beekeeping practices that are instituted by our state and
Okay.
recommended by our state association. So Dennis is going to share with us another perspective, and as somebody who eats organically. I feed my chickens organically, and I've been organic for many, many years. I'm deeply interested in at least having a conversation about your perspective.
Okay. Well, first of all, it is true that the acid is a natural product, but it's only natural if the chemical companies don't super it. They always add stuff to it to make it stronger, which means that it's not a actual natural product anymore because they've moved it, added stuff to it. If you've ever watched somebody to do a formic acid treatment, then if you look in front of the hives, you can see all the grass is dead. Well, that can't be good for the bees. So it is not any longer a natural product. So the only natural product is not putting anything in your hive to begin with.
Yeah, so let's get back to the book and what the workbook entails. So when we started talking about your book, you started talking about the theoretical approach to beekeeping that constituted the writing and publishing of the book. So why don't you hold up the book again and just kind of thumb through, because I'm not seeing. Let's see if I can see. I can't see a table of contents on
Here's the
Amazon.
table of contents to the personal journey book right here.
Okay, and why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay. In this book, I describe lots of different things that I've changed. Um, I've gone to many clubs as a speaker, and I like to ask the club, what is the most important inspection of the year? And most of the folks will raise their hand and say the spring inspection. That's
Okay,
not
let me answer it. Let me answer it.
true.
Second generation beekeeper, 7 years with my bees. Okay, so I would answer that. I always have in my calendar December 5th inspection.
Okay, well, the fall inspection is the way I like
It's
to put
better than the winter inspection. Well, depending on where you are and what the weather is, right? Yeah.
Well, let me
Okay.
put it to you this way. If if you do a winter or spring inspection and you're hoping that your bees will come out okay, well, the national average of loss in this country is 45%, right? You've read that?
Yes, I've read
Okay.
that.
My losses through the whole time I've been beekeeping, which is 50 plus years, has been 10% or less. And what do I contribute that to? I contributed to the most important inspection of the year, which is a fall inspection.
Good. Okay, let's talk about it. Okay, so what else have you learned?
If if you don't do a good fall inspection, people are so excited about spring coming. Well, you got to hope your bees are alive in the spring, okay?
That's right. You got to get through the winter, right?
You got to get through the winter first. And people tend to baby their hives. If they see a weaker hive in the fall, they try to baby it along. You should not do that. You should unite it to a hive that needs that population to make it through the wintertime so you can have it alive and well in the springtime.
I'm going to take notes on what you're saying. Okay, Dennis. So,
Just read my book.
when's the, well, for sure. We want to get people really interested in what
Sure.
you're saying so that they get the rest of it, right? So let's give them a little teaser, a little taste.
Let's
When's
do
the
it.
most important
Okay.
inspection? Um, and so I think that it's important that people kind of understand, like, well, what we're actually talking about in this video, right? So going back to the table of contents, so
Okay.
what else can we anticipate when we purchase the book?
Um, well, if you want me to ask or tell you some more things that I've changed, is
I
that
would
what you're
love
asking?
that. Yeah.
Okay. Um, the splits, how to make a split. Most people that I've talked to over the years, and a lot of the books also say it, that when you make a split, you have to move the split to another location, like 2 miles away from the original location. I can put them side by side and they will work perfectly. So I explain how you can do that in my book in detail.
Nice. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, what else? What else? The top, I'm gonna think about the top things that Dennis has learned over 50 years of beekeeping so that
Okay,
we don't
listen
make
to
the
this.
same mistakes.
Oh, yes. Here's a good one. So most books and most clubs will teach you when you feed sugar water, is to 50-50, okay? 50 sugar, 50 water. So that's not the best way to do it. Let's face it, it's not the water that stimulates the wax glands in a bee. It is the sugar that stimulates the wax glands in a bee. Okay, so they are going to draw out your foundation a lot faster if you use a 50% sugar and 25% water. Does
Okay.
that make sense?
Yeah.
It's not the water that stimulates those wax glands, it's the sugar. So that's a huge thing, especially with beekeepers, new beekeepers who are trying to draw out foundation.
All
So
times of the year or different times of the year? Do you alter it
any
based on what season it is?
anytime you feed bees sugar water, which is not the best thing to feed them, honey's the best thing. But if you have to feed them sugar water, it's 50% sugar and 25% water.
Okay,
And
follow-up
you'll,
question. So in the winter, where we are in the mountainous region, um,
yes,
we do candy boards in the winter time. So
okay.
what's your opinion about candy boards?
Well, do you have a beetle problem? Let me
Uh,
ask you that.
Sometimes some
Okay.
apiaries in the mountains do.
I think if you have a beetle problem, all these gadgets that you put in there as far as uh, beetle traps and all that stuff, you don't need any of that stuff. The biggest thing about a hive that has beetles is that it is not strong enough to keep the beetles out. That's the biggest thing. You have to have strong hives. Now, when I say strong hives, I mean this is important. You should never give your bees more room in the hive than they are capable of taking care of.
Okay, let's talk about bee space in just a second, but back to
Right.
the sugar boards. So our practice here in Western North Carolina is to do liquid sugar,
Yes.
like what you're talking about, of various uh people use it at different times of the year. We're going to have different types of concentration. Okay.
Yes.
But in the winter, the common practice for most of our club members is going to be these candy boards, which is basically like like my husband made shims, and then basically just add enough water so that the sugar becomes like sand, and then I
Okay.
hard pack it into the really short shim frame, and then I
Yes.
place that on top of the bees so that they have this beautiful source of hard packed sand sugar
Yes.
over the winter. So,
Well,
um,
let me ask you this then, a question to what you just said. That sugar is going to have water to completely dilute it. Is that right?
well, not in, if it's just enough to make it like sand and then it hard packs it, that's what we
Yes.
mean by candy board.
Okay, but when the bees go after it, I'm assuming they're going to have some kind of water to make it a little thinner.
No, they just eat it straight from the board.
Okay. Okay. Well, if that works, that's good. I'm not familiar with that system.
It could
We've
just be
never
the
had.
difference of the terrain, right? Because, of course, in Texas, there's going to be different needs,
Yes.
probably more hydration for the bees than
Yes.
what we would need because we're like a rainforest here.
Okay.
So it's
Oh, okay.
always raining, it's always
Okay.
wet. We got
Okay.
problems with mold. If anything, you're
Okay.
opening up the hive going, oh my gosh, how can I help out this hive
Yes.
because it's super moldy, right?
I
Hopefully, you don't have
understand.
those hives.
Yeah, I don't have that issue here.
Yeah, Texas is going to be much more dry. It's the same conversation around whiskey, right? So I grew up in Kentucky, and we
I
made
wouldn't know about that. I'm
so
sorry.
my husband always says Texas whiskey because of the dry weather, right? It affects the wood that makes the
Okay.
whiskey. I'm not a whiskey drinker either. I don't even like
Okay.
alcohol,
You
but
just drink it, right?
for me it's like I don't get the whole thing. Even though I'm from
Okay.
Kentucky, I don't get it, right? I would I would
Yes.
I would rather have some fruit juice, but
Right,
But it's an interesting thing, like, also with honey, right? Because it depends on the flowers, and then the honey
right,
tastes like the environment. Well, the same
right.
thing with the way that the bees are thriving and
Mhm.
surviving has a
Okay,
lot to do with what's available and resources to them, including the feed if you do supplemental feeding. So, okay,
right,
so that's clear about the boards. Now let's go back to bee space. So,
okay.
for sure, right? So, talk a little bit about what you've learned in 50 years about bee space.
Well, bee space is very important, number one. Um, I'm going to talk about how to introduce a queen cage. 99% of the people I've ever spoke to about introducing a queen cage is that they take the cage. Well, number one, I would always ask the breeder for the wooden cage, not the little plastic ones, because you can't see through the little plastic ones because they gum it up over a little period of time. So you don't know if the queen's alive or not in most cases. So I always ask for the three compartment queen cage. Okay. So what you do with that is you pull the cork on the candy side. Okay. Now, most people that I've talked to, beekeepers, is that they'll separate the frames and push that queen cage down in between those two middle frames. Well, they've already messed up bee space, okay? Because at the other end or close to the cage, it's wider than bee space, okay? And not only that, the queen cage will destroy the wax, either foundation or drawn comb, on both of the front sides of those frames, okay? And not only that is when you go to check to see if the queen is out of the cage, you have to, most cases, suit up and go in and pull it out. You're destroying some more wax, and you got to look to see if the queen is out of the cage. All of that is not necessary, okay? And sometimes the queen cage will fall to the bottom board. And if it turns over where the bees can't get to the screen, she may end up starving to death. Who knows? I've seen it happen. So the way I have learned to do it is I take the queen cage and I lay it with the screen up on top of the top bars of the top brood box, okay? Then I have a little spacer that I fit down on top so I can put a regular uh, migratory top on it. So that gives me that space. So now, let's say 3 days go by, all I have to do is raise the top and I can see in the screen, oh, she's alive, she's still in there, I don't need to let her out. And if she's gone, I just remove the cage and I put the top back down. I come back in 4 or 5 days, check for eggs. That's it. That's all of it. It doesn't need to be complicated. And most books make it complicated. So, and I also hear that, oh, well, if that queen cage destroys the wax, they'll rebuild it. That is a true statement, but they are only going to rebuild it with drone cone, not worker cone. So you've lost some worker cone there. So there's a lot of disadvantages to the way most people introduce a queen. Same thing with a package. If you have a package, you're going to take the queen out of the package into her cage and you're going to set it on top, like I discussed. You're going to take the can out and you're going to pour the bees out onto the queen cage and then lay the rest of them on there and you'll have a brood box on top, which is empty, and you'll put your top on that. Now, so many times I see people, they go and they take their package and they start shaking it out into the front. Yes, they'll go in, that's true, but not all of them. A lot of them will go into other hives, and you've lost that kind of population. If you lay the queen cage inside all the ones that you poured in there and that are in the queen package will stay, because they will stay by marking their territory or their hive the first time they go out of the hive. So you're saving all the bees that would ordinarily just fly everywhere in the air. So that is a huge savings over the long haul for
I
people.
really, yeah, Dennis, I really like how what you've learned over the 50 years of your experience is how to be efficient and how to have the bees well-being first. And
Yes,
because I too believe that a strong, and I our club teaches, right? If you're having pests and things of that nature, there's nothing that can combat those challenges like a healthy hive. You got
that's
a healthy
exactly right.
hive, you got a strong population, and
You
you've
can.
got the bees will take care of it themselves. So it's all about supporting those bees and
Right.
having them be strong. So
Right.
in our efforts, so we've talked a little bit about you talked about let me just kind of do a summary here, right? We talked about when important inspections, the most important inspection of the year. You also talked about side by side splits, feed, and then also introducing queen cages. And then let's go back a little bit to the pest conversation because I think that the
Okay.
controversy around chemicals, no chemicals, natural beekeeping, not natural beekeeping, what are some ways that you've learned over 50 years to really have a strong hive so
Okay.
that they can do those pests? And then at the end of the day, when you really get into it with somebody about chemical
Mhm.
intervention for varroa mites, how
Mhm.
specifically are you impacting a hive that you deem as healthy, but then all of a sudden has been overcome with some type of pest?
Well, first of all, I learned a long time ago never to get into an argument with people, because people, some beekeepers that swear by these chemicals, they're going to want to argue with you. It's like a smoker. If you tell a smoker, I used to way back, I used to get angry when somebody said, "Oh gosh, get rid of that smoke. I can't stand it." You would get very upset over it if you were the smoker. Okay. So I don't argue with people. I just say, look, this is the way I do bees. And if I'm willing to share with you, if you like what I hear, and even if you don't, if you would just try it and see if you like it. You don't know if you're going to like it unless you try it. So you do it your way or do it my way, that's okay. I'm good with it. But this is the way I do it. Okay. So I used to raise my own queens back in the 80s when I was commercial. I used to raise my own queens, and I would always choose the survival of the fittest. Okay. That's very important. Okay. Because most beekeeping breeders, beekeeper breeders, they treat their chemical hives with the chemicals. If they treat their hives with chemicals and you don't when you buy from them, chances are you're not going to have a very strong hive because they're dependent on that. Their immune system is really wrecked. So you need to find somebody that has uh, bees that does not use chemicals in their hive. Are you going to have chemicals in your hive no matter what you do? Probably, but not much. You don't want to add chemicals. So the big beekeepers, they turn their wax in, they're using chemicals, they turn their wax in for processing, but the processing doesn't take the chemicals out. So when they make foundation, you go buy the foundation, you do have some chemicals in there. But if you add more chemicals to it, you're not doing yourself a favor. So the best way to do this, and this has been a blessing to me, is that I have always selected from my own yard, and I'm really on my bees all the time. I love my bees. So I select from the survival of the fittest. That's the way I did it. Now, 7 years ago, when I finally had to turn in my hive tool because I'm getting too old, I started buying, I have a few hives, encouraging people to buy from the Russian Beekeeping Breeders Association.
Oh,
Now,
really? Well, this
let's
is
talk
interesting.
about the
Okay.
Russian bee, the true Russian bee,
Okay.
not the hybrid Russian bee. Okay, that's a totally different subject. The
Okay.
Russian bee, there's only 3 people in this country that raise the true Russian bee because it is so much work. They send people out, or the people in Baton Rouge send inspectors out to these different people that actually raise them and check them every year to make sure they're still staying pure because the protocol is so tight. Now, let's talk about the Russian bee. The Russian bee will go around in the hive. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm telling you, they can cross the comb and they can smell the mite inside the sealed cell. They'll tear it open. They will go in and grab that larva and throw it out of the hive. They will take care of the mites on their own. And the beetles, I used to get a kick out of watching those things, chasing the beetles, not in my hive, but I go out and help other people. And it's hilarious. But that is the key. That is the silver bullet to today's beekeeping, is that Russian Beekeeping Association.
Okay, let me just interject here for those of you who are hopefully listening with an open mind. We've
Yes.
got a beekeeper here with 50 plus experience, years experience. If my uncles were alive today, Dennis, I imagine having the same conversation with them. You know, they're now deceased, but they were keeping bees, you know, back in the day before varroa mites was even an issue for
Mm-hmm.
us. And so to me, it's a fascinating conversation. And
Yes,
like everything, you ask 100 different beekeepers about one issue, you're going to get 100 different answers. But
at
what we're doing
least.
is really picking the brain of this author and beekeeper with his mass experience. And the one thing that I want to point out, if you don't know, because you're probably coming across this interview on YouTube. So this is going to be where you probably found this interview with Dennis. I want to point out that last year I interviewed a gentleman named Crispin Given from Purdue
Mm-hmm.
University, and I
Yes,
highly recommend that you watch this video.
I
Um,
did.
okay, this what he talks about with breeding bees that bite mites is exactly what Dennis is talking about from his anecdotal experience in the hives all these years. So what they're doing at Purdue University is they're looking at selective gene traits
Mhm.
that are going to fight the mites. So it's
Right.
really fascinating to me that science has finally caught up with a 50-year beekeeper.
That's right.
You knew it
That's
all
right.
along, didn't you?
I knew it all along. No.
So I
It's
love this. All
survival
right.
of the fittest. That's what you got to work for. That's what he's doing. Really, on a certain level, he's selecting from like the survival of the fittest. That's basically what he's doing, except he's doing it gene wise.
Right. Yeah, but you know, as a beekeeper, you can tell, whoo, I got a really strong queen over here. I've got a weak
Yes,
queen over here because you can tell once you're looking at the brood, right? You can
right. The
tell at the
pattern.
output of the
Yes.
queen. So I love this. All right. So in conclusion, why don't you show your books again and
Okay.
remind us what, and then tease us a little bit about what we haven't heard about so people want to buy it.
Okay. One thing I think is in here also is a lot of people requeen their hives every year. Why would you do that? You only requeen your hive when you look at the brood pattern, and if it's not good, then you requeen. It doesn't mean you're going to get a new, better queen if you requeen that queen. You don't know what you're going to get. It could be worse than the one you're killing. So don't go by that. Go by the brood pattern inside the hive. whether or not you need to requeen or not. I just wanted to add that, okay?
Perfect.
Okay, this personal journey here, it covers a lot of different things that I've done experiments on, and it fully tells the 50 years in my beekeeping career. And it has a lot of good information from uh, spring management, keeping records. People keep records. Why do people keep records? I don't know why they keep records. Because if you look in the hive, boy, they sell some real expensive record keeping stuff. If you look in your hive this week, doesn't mean it's going to be good next week. Things change. If you made a whole bunch of money or honey this time out of that hive, doesn't mean you're going to have a whole bunch of honey next time because things in the hive change. So I have a chapter on that in this book and how I keep records using the Stone Age man technique, using bricks on top of the hive in certain positions. So I can look at my yard and tell exactly what I need to do because I left bricks in a certain shape or a spot.
Okay,
So
just a second, just
that's
a
good.
second. So our local club here in Henderson County, shout out to Jim Poe, who teaches and mentors. He teaches with that same Stone Age method that you do.
Oh, good. He
Yes,
must have read my book,
he must
huh?
have. And then also, I just want to also, for those of us who are embracing technology, I know that it's a new thing, Dennis, right? And just like Zoom and meeting me on Zoom and that, I
Yes.
appreciate you coming over to the dark side of the of the
No, no, no.
technology world. The reason why we are doing keeping Hive records as a global community around the world as beekeepers is so that we can report back to science how the bees are doing, how we're doing in the fight against mites, and then also to record any new type of pests. Like for example, at one point Australia was free. Now there's certain things that we have to be worried about, even in the countries that were free. So we are not alone as beekeepers. One reason
Right.
why we keep records is not only for your own apiary, but also the intersection of all of our apiaries. Okay, go ahead, Dennis.
Okay. I got it. Okay. This is the book that I have taken a lot of the emails that people email me with questions over all the years, and I saved them and I saved my answer. So I'm almost positive that somewhere in this book, you're going to come up with a question that is in this book with an answer.
100%. Okay, how great is this? Okay, so just direct me right here. So there's this one, right? So I'm gonna put this in the chat for people who are looking at this via Zoom, probably our members. And then I'd like to purchase them, but where is so there's two books. So there's another book that you have.
Yes.
Okay, so let's just do I'm just gonna do Dennis. Um, let's see, let's make sure I put your oh yeah, just Dennis Brown, and then let's do beekeeping. There they are. So
There we
one is the
are.
Q&A, and then one is a personal journey. So these are the two.
Those are the two.
So what we're going to do as a club is we are going to raffle off these two at one of our
Oh,
meetings.
good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be really great. If somebody wants to actually interact with you and talk to you live, or would you be open to hearing from them?
Of course, I can take that down and give them my answer and record it.
Okay, perfect. And how is your preferred way that they reach you?
I will give you, I just recently closed down my beekeeping website. So I will give you my personal
Email.
uh, email and you can reach me through my personal email.
Okay, I think that I'm gonna show people. Is it do you want to use the one with the Yahoo one at Hercules Inspections or something different?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, let me just put that on the screen for everybody real quick. That way it's enough private that we don't have to worry about giving phone numbers and things like that, because
No, no, no.
YouTube gets a little weird about personal information, but I think an email address is going to be fine.
Okay.
especially since we're talking about it. Okay.
Okay.
So if you wanted to reach out to Dennis, it would be HerculesInspections@yahoo.com.
That's correct.
Okay. Can you see that right there? Let's see if
I
I can.
can.
Okay. Let's just make it super large for everybody.
Oh, yeah, I can see it better now.
There you go. Okay. Now,
Yes.
anything else that you would like the thousands of beekeepers who are going to be watching this video now, this year, and in years to come to know?
Oh, there's so many things. Um, to remove honey supers. I mean, I have a chapter in my personal journey. It's incredible how some people remove their honey. It's crazy. I knew one guy that he would take his supers off and put it on a wagon and hook it up to his lawnmower, and he would drive around the neighborhood until all the bees got out. I mean, it's crazy how some of these people come up with stuff. I mean, it probably took him 2 days to get one super clean. So anyway, I mean, there's just a wealth of information in here. So
Okay, well, wait a minute. So for some people who are watching this,
yeah,
first of all, it doesn't have to be that hard. That's hilarious. Okay.
it is.
I'm sorry if you're watching this and you're doing that. Just bless you. Bless you. Okay.
Exactly.
Like, bless your
And
little heart. Okay, so
oh,
Dennis, just quickly, so for our newbies who are like, well, how do I do it? Just give us your quick 1-2 on how to get that done.
well, there are several ways to do it. However, it's not the best ways. Some people lift their super and start banging it down, trying to knock the bees out of it. That, I tell you what, that will anger bees so quickly. You won't even be able to get out of the bee yard if you start banging. So, plus it breaks the ears off of your frames because those frames are heavy with honey. Okay, that's one way. Another way is getting a bee blower. This is hilarious. So you take your honey super and you stand it up like that, and you get your bee blower and you blow all the bees out of it. Okay, so you gotta pray that your helper in there isn't in the line of fire. He will get, or she will get covered in
Or
bees, and I've
or
seen it
husbands, or if you're just a backyard
Yeah,
beekeeper,
well, yeah,
or
or
husbands or dogs,
wives.
or wives,
It's
or
crazy,
grandmamas.
especially grandmas. Okay, you're gonna spread disease that way. If the queen happens to be, it's rare, but if she happens to be in the honey super, I don't know where she'll be now. She's been blown out. So the way that I recommend that you do it is to get a fume board and use a chemical way of moving the bees down. It doesn't irritate them. It doesn't do anything. You get an actually clear super to where you're not carrying bees into the honey house. You never want to do that. So and these products are extremely good. Some people smoke them out. Well, the honey smells like smoke when you do that. So the best way that I can say and have used for many years is the chemical. You get a fume board and you put a little bit of that chemical on it and you turn it over. You don't want to put it
Now, what
completely.
I just have to ask the question because when we started, you were like, okay, we're not going to use any chemicals. We're going to do
No, no, no,
everything
no.
natural, but this is the exception.
This is an exception. It's not that kind of, it's not a pesticide chemical.
Wanted to
Okay.
clarify that for everybody.
It's
Good.
not a pesticide chemical. Okay. So when you put it on top of the hive with the fume board, you don't want to put it on rectangularly. You want to move it to the side so you get a little airspace down in here for the chemical to go down to push the bees. Sometimes if you put it rectangularly, they'll just sit there and do this. So you need to provide a little airspace for them. It works beautifully. It doesn't taint the honey. It doesn't hurt the bees. It's just a good way of doing it.
Well, I could just talk to you all day long, Dennis, and
Well,
just
go
like a
ahead.
wealth of information, and
Thank you.
really appreciate It feels like being with my uncles again.
Oh,
Yeah, they're so sweet, and
yeah.
they had uh hundreds and hundreds of hives in their
Oh,
heyday. In your heyday, how many hives? Like the most that you
three, 350,
350.
350. I didn't have, I didn't, I streamlined mine, and that's why I did so much experimenting because I had to streamline what I was doing. Um, we don't go out, I don't go out anymore. The honey flow is starting and start putting a bunch of boxes on there and walking away like I did back in the mid to early 80s. You could do that, but you can't do that. You shouldn't do that anymore because, again, you don't want to offer the bees more space than what they can actually care for. So you should go out, and when the first honey super's got white on the top, that's brand new wax, and they're starting to work on the outside combs, then you put it on. You don't put it on any earlier. Bees like to work up. So they may leave these unfilled. They want to go up. So they'll start going into the middle of the next spot. So you don't want to do that. You want to add it as you need it.
All right, I've got um 2 rapid fire questions for you before we close. You
Okay?
ready?
Yes.
8 frame or 10 frame?
9 frame.
9 frame.
Yes. 9 frame, always. You start with 10, so you get a nice clean 10 frame, but then you go into 9 frame.
All right. I already think I know the answer to this next one, but plastic frames or wooden frames?
Never plastic. That's my opinion. I'm not going to argue with anybody. I never use plastic, ever. I've seen them draw out, if this is a frame and it's plastic, I've seen them put braces off of here and do their own cone and not even touch this. And once this is worn off, they won't ever use it. Some people have good luck with it.
All right. Last question. Mason jar, in hive feeder, what type of feeder?
That's a good
Baggies?
question. Yeah. No, that's a good question. A lot of people use the frame feeder. I would never recommend a frame feeder because it offers a space for beetles to collect in there. And I always use quail feeders. I know, well, not chicken feeders. They look like chicken feeders. If you use a chicken feeder, the bees will drown in that little ring there. If you use a quail feeder, it's much smaller and the bees won't drown in there. Now, I could put even 2 gallon, 1 gallon quail feeders on top of my top bar with an empty box and then the top on top of that. And
Let me
then
just show
all
you
I have
some
to do
pictures.
is,
Let me show you
I'm
some
sorry,
pictures, Dennis. Okay, when I put in quail feeder, I get
yes,
a lot of different types of quail feeders.
I don't see the one. It looks like a chicken feeder, a
Like
waterer,
this
I'm
one,
sorry. Let's do a waterer, I meant, yes,
like this
like,
guy.
yes, let's see it. It's a waterer, I meant feeder, but because I use it as no. Um, it's similar. It's like this. It's oh, you had it.
Oh, I did have it. Oh,
I
it's like
think
which
so.
one? Oh, you saw it?
Similar to that one right there. It's 1 liter, but it's called a quail waterer. I meant waterer because I always feed my bees with it. So, but
Okay,
that's it right there. I can take
let's
2 of
do
those
let's do
and put them
water.
on the top bars, and then put a spacer around it. And all I have to do is peek in it to see if they're through.
Do you see
And
it
I have to
here?
refill it.
How about this one?
That's perfect. That's a
Okay,
quail base. That's perfect.
there you go, everybody.
There it is. They won't drown in here.
There you go.
There it is.
Okay, good. Perfect. Well, I love learning that. That was kind of a little fun Easter egg at the end there.
There
So
you go.
I really appreciate your time today, and we will definitely talk up your book at our club. And I want to just acknowledge you for reaching out the old school way, right? You just sent me a message and said, "Hey, this is who I am. I've got this book, and I think that you're," and in my other life, I'm a publicist, right? I do PR. And so I
Oh,
thought, I really like this straightforward email, just asking to be introduced to the club. So I'm going to be
yeah,
happy to do that for you. Okay, Dennis?
there's a wealth of information here, streamlined.
Thank you. And I'm going to keep your information handy for myself if I ever need it. And if you ever come to Western North Carolina, you and your lovely wife, you just let me know. Okay?
Beautiful over there. It's
Okay. Hold on
beautiful.
just a second. I'm going to stop the recording, and then I want to chat with you a little more. Okay?